MG and Scotty, another potty. How we doing?
Boys,
Good afternoon, lads. How are we?
doing well, man.
MG, I missed you, bro. I haven't seen you in a little bit of time. You didn't come out on Friday night. You had something else on.
It's
So I can't
heartbreaking.
wait to see you on Friday. I
It's
come down to the gym,
heartbreaking.
obviously, do some PTs, and then we go out Friday night. So
But
I miss you, bro.
Scott doubled up for me, man. I miss you too. Scott doubled up for me. Can you tell everyone what he's? I'll explain what happened on your Friday, and then was it Saturday or Sunday?
Oh, the double soup. Yeah, we went for a soup
Doubles.
on Friday, and then when I got home, Jen said, "Oh, how was it?" I said, "Yeah, it was really, really good. We should go." And it was pretty warm on Saturday, I think, from memory. And she finished work early, so I was like, "Let's go. We'll take the kids. They've never had a soup. The little outdoor area there is good. They can run around." So we
Definitely.
got there at like I don't know 5 o'clock or something. It was pretty dead.
Hmm.
And yeah, the girl there was like, "Wow, was you're back again?" I'm like, "Yeah, I brought the kids this time as well." So
That's
Harvey
awesome.
had his first soup and Evie as well. And I didn't realize they do salads there. Jen just had a salad with the chicken in it. She said it was awesome.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. That's awesome, man. Because
Yeah,
I
man,
knew
it
like
was it
she
was
would have
good.
remembered you because you brought in your gluten-free wrap.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this time I had more wraps because Evie's eats gluten free as well. So I made her a soup, but in the end, she didn't even touch it because she ate half of Jenny's salad, and we got the kids some chips and stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up
You
having
smashed
two
the two.
soups. And
Winning.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I had the meat sweats late that night. I was all right after I ate it, but at about 10 o'clock, I was sitting in bed and I could just feel my body heating up as it was just trying to metabolize all that chicken. So I'm definitely a one soup kind of guy because there's a bit of
That's
meat in them.
that's
Yeah, yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. It's awesome, man. I love
Yeah,
it.
but no, it's good. It was really good.
Uh, I got a kind of serious question for you guys. I'm going to ask it, but I want you to give an answer within about 5 seconds because I don't want you to overthink it. All right? Now, you don't know what this question is. This is like straight off, right?
Chicken
No.
or lamb?
So I'm going to ask it to both of you, and I want you to both yell out your answer within about 5 seconds. Okay?
Okay,
So $10 million or go back 10 years of your life.
$10 million.
Go back 10 years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I, I would. I'd go back the 10 years because you can't get time back. I'd definitely go back.
Oh, there's see answering it so quick it's hard because there's so many
Yes.
questions like I want to break down. Like,
Yeah, because some people like if you really, really think about it, like, cool, yeah, I'll go back 10 years and I'll go invest in Bitcoin or something, and then make like
Oh yeah, I didn't even
$10
think of
billion,
that.
dollars, right? But
yeah,
I think that having not think about it and more think about time versus money, not I can go back in time and make money. Like you got to choose between the two. Makes it
yeah.
really interesting because I was listening to this potty of this guy's a billionaire, right? And he's in his 50s. And he got asked the question, and they said, "Would you give up all your net worth to go back 10 years?" He goes, "In a fucking heartbeat." And that's someone that's a billionaire. So I was like, okay, let me make it a little bit more practical for us because we're not billionaires, right? Or not even millionaires. So I came up with the 10 mil or 10 years.
Yeah, I'll tell you what my rationale was,
Go.
just in that 5 seconds. It's like everything great started to happen for me when, say, Meave and I got together, right?
Hmm.
Which was about five. So my brain, I was like, well, I could try and start that process 5 years earlier.
Yeah,
And then where would I be? I'd be 5 years ahead.
yeah, 100%. That's what I thought too. It's like everything I know now, if I could go back 10 years, having all the knowledge and experience I have now, life would be so different. I'd probably still be doing what I want to do, like this, but it would just be in a different space for sure. Yeah.
See, mine was probably more framed thinking I've got two amazing kids. If I did
Yeah.
something to change that narrative and I wasn't able to have them, but also straight away I'm thinking $10 million, my kids, I can look after them, I can scale
Mhm.
back, I can be full time, not have to do anything. Like if you're smart with what you do with $10 million, you don't have to really, you can live off that, make that work for you, and then I could just eat, train, sleep, and be a dad and be a husband. It'd be pretty good.
Yeah, it makes total sense
Hey,
because
but
pretty different.
could you cheat the system? You know all the results for the
Well,
last 10
well,
years.
this is the thing. If I have more time to think about
Yeah.
it, obviously, of course, I would just
See?
go back. I'd do everything the same, but instead of buying a house, I would try and find out the guy that came up with Uber Eats or whatever the next big thing was, and say, "Bro, I've
I
got
want
this
in.
crazy idea. Let's split it down the middle."
See?
I'll
Yeah.
put up the startup, and then
Time
you
is the
do
winner.
everything, and then I'll just live off the passive income forever, and then
I,
it's a win-win.
I think as you get older, that the answer to the question will change.
Yeah, of course.
Time.
100%. Yeah,
You think
totally.
time will be more important? So he's
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah, I think time will be
But
more
if you
important.
were to ask me, you're gonna still and like have everything that you have in terms of the people and all of those things, and all of that stays the same, then 100% I'll just go back for sure.
Yeah.
But if that was like uncertain and it could change, you know, the outlook on it, then
Yeah. We're getting super philosophical, but let me just add one more thing in because I was listening to that same potty and this guy talked about how his father passed away, and he said um, that he would have acted differently and would have said things differently and spent time differently with his dad if he could go back 10 years too. So, some of us out there still have our parents, some of us don't, but for the ones that do, maybe that's something to think about. If if someone in your family was to pass away, would you have some regret in thinking, I wish I spent more time or said things that I didn't ever say to them or whatever that may be? So that made me think after I listened to that, and I was like, I, I, I don't want to live with any regret from that perspective of how I treat people around me. Could be parents, could be whoever that may be, because if they were to leave this earth, then I reckon there'd be some regrets. So I've definitely changed some things. Like my parents, they're getting close to 70 now, right? My dad's 70 this year. So, um, yeah, it's definitely perspective there for sure.
yeah, spot on, man.
Yeah. One question that we got was, when you were young, what did you want to be when you grew up? MG?
Well, that's a good question, man. Um, we had this we had this thing in my family when I was really young. It's going to make people laugh. Do you know? Do you know what? I reckon I would have been sub 7. But do you remember the toilet duck?
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to be the toilet duck.
Why? What?
I just thought he was a cool character, man. Would like had like a superhero costume. Would clean toilets. I just thought the toilet duck was a legend, man. I wanted to be. I wanted to be the toilet duck.
Okay, other than the toilet duck, was
Yeah,
was there any profession or something?
that is a very important profession. Thank you very much.
Yeah, true.
No, I always wanted to be a police officer because my grandfather was.
That's
Well, he
cool.
was in Italy. He was a police officer in Italy. So that's what I always thought I wanted to be. But as I got older, I just knew that it was not going to suit me because I'm just too. I just always want to help people, and then
Mhm,
there's some people who would probably take advantage of that, and I
mhm.
wouldn't notice. And I
Yeah,
started to realize that as I got into my early 20s, just with my personality.
yeah. What about you, Scotty?
I always just wanted to play professional basketball.
Really? Did you
Yeah,
ever
I used to,
play? Like not professionally, but did you ever play a lot of basketball?
yeah. So, and I was probably on that trajectory earlier. That was what I was going to do. I had a scholarship to America, and then I decided I had a relationship at the time, and I didn't decided I wasn't going to go, and so I didn't. And then I just got sick of it, just because when you're younger, you probably don't have looked that far ahead, but when you're in that sort of between 17 and 20 back then, there was so many obligations. Like it became like a job early on, and you're not being rewarded. Like on say when you're turning 18, 19, and I would have a game on a Friday night, and then you'd have to get on a team bus and go and play wherever it was in the country that Saturday night. Like it could be a country game, it could be anywhere, and then all of your friends are out having a good time, and you're missing out on that. And the next day you have a recovery, then you have another game, and it just
Mhm.
wasn't very fun anymore. So, but that was what I wanted to do, and then in the end, decided I didn't want to pursue it anymore.
Wow, interesting. I never knew that about you, man. That's
Mm.
awesome. That's so cool. Um, for me, and as cliche as this sounds, I wanted to be a fireman because my dad was one and is one. So
As in,
that
he's still he still works as a fireman now
yeah, he is. He doesn't like fight fires because he's like high up in the ranking now, so he's more of
with
an amateur.
MFB or with the CFA.
MFB. Yeah,
Oh, mad!
yeah. He's been doing it for like over 35. I think it's like 37 years.
That's so cool. It's so hard
So
to get into the fireys.
yeah, now it's really hard. Yeah, it is really,
Yeah.
really hard. Um, so I wanted to do that, but I also wanted to work with cars because my dad was always good
Yeah.
with his hands, and that was his hobby. So I'd be the kid outside that would watch his dad do things and learn. And I got to eventually do that. So like out of school, I did mechanical engineering at uni, worked for Toyota for X amount of years as an engineer. So I ended up doing that. So one thing I did of what I wanted to be when I grew up was that, and I was able to do that. But not the fireman thing. I'm probably a bit too old now probably a bit too old to go and try to be a fiery.
No, you're not, man. You're a
Probably be done.
beast. You're a fitness. A big part of it is you've got to have the physical abilities. Like the physical testing on that's real. I mean, you know all about it. I've trained a few
Yeah.
people for it. It's pretty full on, man.
Actually, it's funny because I had a client that was trained to be a fiery, and I actually changed her whole programming to help her pass the physical and practical aspect. Because
Hmm.
if you go online, you can look at all the physical tests you need to do, and they're very specific. Like
Yeah.
it's like carrying X amount of weight up a stairs on one hand. It's like rope. It's like pulling the hose. It's carrying the. So I changed her training to like have like different things in it. So I reckon physically I could do it. The hardest part with the fiery is actually the interview, right? So, and what's difficult is the people that do well at it are the people that are older and have life experience and have worked in different industries, because it's got to do with like, your knowledge, your experience, your life experience, and how to handle situations, right? So I probably could, but yeah, no, I think I'm past that.
What made you want to deviate from mechanical engineering, given that you were always into it, you did your studies with it, and then you just didn't want to do it anymore?
Back then, the automotive industry was dying in Australia. So like car manufacturers were going overseas.
Hmm.
Like obviously we know Holden closed, Ford eventually closed, Toyota closed. They all closed here, right? So the only thing that was left was really design. And I did a fair bit of design work, but I was like, eventually I'm going to run out of a job. Like there's going to be no progression. And especially when you've been in one industry for so long and that's your experience level. If that industry is no longer there, to transfer into a different industry but still engineering is difficult. You got to start from the bottom again. I was like, no, I'm not prepared to do that. So that's when I went and did project management roles at ANZ in financial services. So
Mm.
it was head office there and did project management for 5 years. And then during that time, I was competing and just having fun with my hobbies. So then I made that big switch of I think I want to do this full time.
That's
And
cool.
it was a big risk, calculated risk though, because
Yeah.
I had worked for so long. I was financially stable. I had bought a house. I made sure I had a fair bit of savings to make that jump, so that even though it was a risk, I could still sustain myself until my coaching business built up. And I gave myself
Mhm.
a year to do it. And just
It,
knowing my personality type and not wanting to to fail at stuff, um, I made it work.
See, no regrets. There you go.
No regrets. And you know what is, I think, and you boys can probably attest to this too, is coming from other industries and having different experiences in life actually makes you a better coach. Like if I came straight out of school and just became a coach, I wouldn't be as good as what I am now. So having all those experiences in different industries, working with different people, understanding how people live their life. Obviously, for me, coming from engineering, it's process driven, project management driven. So, a comp prep or even someone's fitness journey is almost like a project. It's like managing a project, right? So a lot of those things have definitely helped. And MG, that everything that you've done in your past has helped you be the coach you are today, and same as you, Scotty.
Oh, definitely, man. Yeah, I did nearly 14 years in the bank. Actually, I did the bank and the gym at the same time for multiple years. I think I might have
That's right.
mentioned that before. But it was actually funny that you spoke about your dad and being a fiery, because as you know, MT, and Scott, you've met my dad as well. So my dad was a bank manager for 40 something years, was retired now.
Mhm.
And I was a bank manager, and we actually were bank managers at the same bank.
Yes.
So we actually got to work together. And anyone who knows my
That's
dad,
so cool.
he's an angel of a man. He's so sweet. Everybody just gravitates to him. He's just got a great personality, super affectionate. So when I would go to a branch, even though I'd been at the bank for 8, 9 years, I was still Mark's son
Yeah.
because of the type of guy that my dad was. But it definitely was like a pretty special thing to have worked in the same business as my dad.
Yeah.
But yeah, that set me up for being able to become a great coach. I mean, I would manage financial relationships, not too dissimilar to what we do now. It is a project, but we're just managing far more aesthetic projects than I was managing at the back.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
So
of course. Talking about coaching, because now that's obviously what we all do. Um, we got a question about what to expect from a coach, the process, communication channels, um, how you should be interacting with your coach and what to expect. So I know we've had a lot of clients come from other coaches, and we see that people do things a little bit differently. Is what we could call it. So maybe MG, you can start
yep.
with, what should someone really expect working with you or working with a coach?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's probably really relevant at the moment, especially to me. I've had like multiple meetings in the last 3 weeks of people who have worked elsewhere, and the systems that they've had in place with their previous coaches have been a bit, I'd say, almost shocking. So like the tracking, the measurement, the communication style has all been a little bit scattered. So to give you a bit of an idea about, what I think the minimum expectation should be in terms of a coaching relationship, whether it's prep or not, but if it's prep without a doubt, right, is some sort of spreadsheet or tracker where you and your coach both get instant access to all of your daily and weekly data. And what I mean by that data is things like weight, nutrition system, steps, sleep, biomarkers, things like that, energy, hunger, stress, anything of that nature. So all of us have some type of system. I know, obviously, Scott, we use yours. I've got my own. MT, I've seen yours as well through your app, and they're all pretty similar. On top of that, there should be access to some style of training program that's also measurable and recordable, where both you and your coach can instantly see results if necessary, and that is able to have changes made when the time is due, when the program's due for a change, and something that you can potentially look at together, assess the data, and put in targets that you want to aim for in the next week or the next block or whatever it is.
So example is not a PDF that's emailed to you that can't be edited or updated and reviewed.
Spot on.
Yeah.
So like as an athlete, I sometimes I record things in a book that I have if I'm training and I'm at a different gym, but I always put it in my spreadsheet because I want to be able to look at it next week and say, okay, Scott, what do you think I should lift? He might put an estimate of what he wants me to aim for. But I want it all digital. I don't want to be going through pieces of paper and trying to find what I did 2 or 3 weeks ago in my training, because it's just not efficient. And anyone let's just talk about prepping, even off season, we're doing a lot. We're training, we've got the food, we're managing steps, we're managing probably families and work and all this out of it. I don't want to be chasing pieces of paper from what I lifted 3 to 4 weeks ago. So that would be another important part. Then I think the two big ones are obviously the check-in process and the type of style that the check-in takes, and how you communicate with your coach. So I'll give you some examples of some stuff that I've heard recently, just in the last couple of weeks. No formal check-in, only when my coach wants to tell me something. No formal check-in process or nowhere to officially check in. I text my coach my weight every day, and that's how we keep track of it. So I would, these things to me are like alarm bells, and anyone who's out there who's coaching on these types of systems either has the most incredible memory in the world, the most amazing photographic memory, because if you're managing any more than a handful of clients, there's just no way that you're going to be able to remember all this data. Or you're wasting a hell of a lot of time going through all of your text messages to try and work out something like your client's weekly average weight. It would just be far too much. So I would say those would be the key things to expect: is a data entry system on both your daily targets, including your nutrition targets and your lifestyle targets, as well as an entry system for your training that you can log and record your weight, so that you know when you need to overload, what you lifted last week, and what your coach's expectations are. And then a formal check-in process that happens, in my opinion, at least every single week, regardless of whether you're in prep or you're in off season. I'm pretty sure all 3 of us check in every client every week, non-negotiable. That's sort of what I would assume would be the minimum for what I would expect from a coach.
Yeah. And all of those plus some kind of visible plan.
For sure.
Yeah, that the client can see, and then obviously you see and you update.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those things. What about anything to add on that, Scotty?
No, I think you
Yeah.
pretty much just ticked it all off. Yeah.
What about communication channel and expectation in frequency of communication? How about that, MG?
Yeah, so I typically deal with all of my clients on two channels. Pretty much everyone, other than email, is via Instagram DM.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't do is talk to clients on multiple channels. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you guys a really funny story from many, many, many years ago. You can see Trimboli really smiling on screen. When I did my first show, all those moons and moons ago, when I was just a young fella and I had a full head of hair, I remember being like 5 or 6 weeks out, and I reckon I messaged MT on Instagram, then Messenger, then I'd shoot him a text. Not the same message. Something else would come in my brain, and I'd be like, oh, well, I just had Messenger open. So this poor bloke is trying to like answer my messages on 4 different platforms. And all he had to do was tell me once. And I was like, shit, man, you're so right. So sometimes as an athlete, you don't even realize you're doing it. So if you're on screen, if you're listening to us now and you're someone who texts or messages your coach on every social media platform that exists, pick one and just try and keep it all in the same place. And also understand that, you know, if your coach, whoever they are, has 10, 20, 30, 40 athletes, sometimes the expectation to get back to that message straight away is not possible, because you've also got to throw in things like, think about Scott's situation. Not only is he coaching 30, 40 competitors, he also runs a gym that's, 6 days a week. It has staff that he has to manage as well as a family, and he's got other commitments. So it's just not possible to have someone who can reply to you instantly all the time. And I imagine every coach out there will do their best to get back as quick as possible. But sometimes it's just about setting the expectation for how fast you should expect a response. And I'm not sure if you guys have like a service level agreement that you try and stick to, but I always say like within 24 hours.
Yeah. So for me, communication, I try to keep coaching communication all on Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, because some people don't have Facebook, but most people do. And that's the sole reason is so it's in one spot, but also I can use my laptop to type, right? Not my phone and with my thumbs, right? So that's why I keep it on there. And you can send files, drag and drop, all that kind of fun stuff. But obviously I chat to people on Instagram, but I say that's social. Like we're not talking coaching stuff there. And if they try to talk coaching stuff there or send me like a progress photo there, I'll be like, hey, go send it to me on Messenger. Or I will save it and then send it to them on Messenger and be like, just putting it here so we have it here, right? Yeah. So that it's all in one spot in one location, because I want it all in one spot. I can scroll up and down and go, what did we chat about? What did we do? What did we speak about? So, and from like how long should it take to get back? You'd expect something 24 hours, but if anyone knows me, I'm getting back to them pretty damn quick, especially if it's within, let's call it typical business hours. If it's between 9 to 6, it's pretty much straight away. If it's at night, I'm probably not on my phone, so you're going to get it in the morning. And then if it's on a Sunday, you're probably going to get it on a Monday. But how about you, Scotty? Do you what kind of channels do you use, and what's the expectation?
Yeah, the same. So I have Instagram. As most people know, I'm not really big on social media. So I have a business Instagram account. I think I have a personal one somewhere, but I haven't been on it since maybe 2013 or whenever it came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't actually know. I think Jenny set it up for me years and years ago, but I don't even know what it is. I wouldn't be able to tell you the handle, the login. I just don't really use it. I don't have time for it. But similar to you guys, so all my communication's done via Instagram, DM. Typically, I'm awake from 5 most days, and I'll have a process. But normally from about 6:30, I'll head over to Instagram and have a look at what DMs athletes have sent through or clients have sent through, and then they'll normally get replied to between when I've opened them and say maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then there'll typically be another spot if it's when I'm eating my lunch in the middle of the day or meal 2 before I train, same thing. And then before I'm about to clock off, if there's anything that's urgent. But then like you guys, after hours, normally from about 5:30, because that's when, if I'm at home, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I've got my kids, I won't be on Instagram until the morning. And even if I do for whatever reason, it's different. You know, if I was talking to, say, you guys, or if it was just some of my friends that have messaged me through that, but I won't open anyone's message just because I'm not working. But that's pretty rare. I'm not normally on social media of an evening. And I think that way, at least you have those boundaries and there's those expectations that if someone sent me something at 9:30 at night, you're not gonna get a response from me then. And I think if you do start doing that, it's very easy to get into a habit of you're just on all the way and all the time. And in our line of work, it's very person driven. And don't get me wrong, if there's something there and I see it and it requires urgency, then of course I'll attend to it. But there have to be boundaries in place. And on the other side of things, if someone's messaged me at 12 o'clock and I just haven't had a chance to get to it, and it's 7 o'clock, and I know that this person is like a few weeks out, whatever, of course I'll make sure that that's a priority. So typically for me, if it's within business hours, it'll be within like 2 or 3 hours, you'll get a response. But after that, it'll just be the next morning.
Yeah. Are you guys the same? I don't have any social media notifications on.
Me neither.
Yeah. What about you, MT?
I do. No dinging or sounds or anything like that, and it's all on my lock screen, so nothing actually pops up, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
It's only on my lock screen, so I'll have to physically like click on my phone and scroll up on my lock screen to see the messages or to see anything. But if I look at my phone and I'm on it doing something, it won't just pop up at the top or whatever it is, like a push notification, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go to bed, or even around about 9:30 at night, even before bed, because I go to bed a little bit later than that, I'll actually put my phone on Do Not Disturb, because I don't even want it to be there. I don't even want it to vibrate. I just don't want it. And then when I wake up, I'll turn it off, Do Not Disturb, and have a look.
So you can set that automatically. So my phone does that at 7 p.m. every night. It goes on Do Not Disturb until 7 a.m. And then if I want to check messages, I can. But if someone tries to ring me, it'll go to voicemail. If they try and text me, it'll see in the little purple text, Scott has it on Do Not Disturb. Because I literally, when I get home, my phone goes upstairs. I got an Apple Watch, and so nothing will come through to that because it's on as well. So that way I can still, if I'm moving around, it tracks my steps. But you don't have to be on that front. But I think it's all of these things that we would just view as that's just what you do in our line of work. I don't think it's common practice, because similar to what we were talking earlier, I signed on a new client about 4 weeks ago who was in a contest prep, and he's fortunate that he's had enough room to be able to still compete this season, but he hadn't heard from his coach in 2 weeks. He hadn't received his check-in. Feedback is normally like every 7 to 10 days, and he's paying top dollar coin for a service. And again, setting through the plan, it's just a generic cookie cutter, nothing real special. And then, it's amazing how, like we spoke about, you have a consult, you go through the process, explain how you run and facilitate your coaching, and then you feel like you're just giving this person, they look at you in like the lottery, like, oh my God, this is going to be so good. And then the next day, if they hit you up with a question and you respond straight away, it's just, again, you're almost on a pedestal because they've gone from getting virtually nothing. And for us, it's just common. It's just how we practice as a coach. Yeah. And it should be, because at the end of the day, if you're charging, whatever, everyone charges what they charge, but you're asking for a fee, you need to render service. You need to make sure that the services that you're rendering are worth the money that you're charging. And again, they're taking the time, they're investing so much, not just money, it's the time and energy in toward an endeavor like a contest prep. As athletes who have competed, we know what toll that takes physically, mentally, emotionally. So for you to not be on board and ride that with them, as you guys know, with our athletes, we're in the trenches with them. Like, we live vicariously through our athletes, and when they're on stage, I know you guys are the same, but I'm giving my athletes the same attention to detail as I am the way I would manage my own contest prep, because it's an honor there's an element of trust that they're putting in you to make sure that you're going to get them the best and most optimal results. So I think it's a shame that unfortunately there are, and it's like every industry, you're going to have a few black sheep that potentially just don't have that same diligence and attention to detail to be able to give back what the client should get. But I think it's common practice now. If you're not getting what we just spoke about, what MG just said before, if your coach isn't giving you that, then there's so many good coaches out there now. Perhaps you just need to, do a little bit more homework and ask around. I think that's the easiest way to be able to gauge. If you're looking at signing on with someone, again, this gentleman said to me, I've spoken to a few people that you work with, yada, yada, yada. So at the end of the day, your reputation is your biggest asset. That's your biggest marketing tool. So it's not hard to, if I want to work with Michael Trimboli, I might have a look at who he coaches, send him a DM. Everyone's pretty friendly on social media. It's not hard to get some information. Yep, great. Yep, great. There you go. The proof is in the pudding. You can see the athletes they present. The way they go about it is great. And then that really should be the due diligence that you take to be able to go about your coach. And if you get a cookie cutter response, like all the details here, this is my pricing, versus asking questions back when someone inboxes me, when we're looking at competing, have you got some progress pictures? And then this is the process. If you were keen to move forward, we would set a consult, go through some bits and pieces, gauge where you're at. I can give you my 2 cents of when I think you would be able to compete. And then from there, if it marries up, great. If it doesn't, no hard feelings.
Yeah, I think there's some things that we do that when we get new clients come across, or even a consult or an inquiry, and we do what we do, they're like, wow, I never got that before, or I never. I think to myself, that's a no-brainer. Like like how else would you interact with someone? How else would you coach someone?
How else are you measuring and analyzing? Like that's It has been mind blowing. But look, on the same token, if it's someone who's starting out and just hasn't got to the point of developing a system like that, or sometimes these things take time, and we've all gotten better as the years have gone on. But there should be a basic system of data analysis and measurement,
100%,
and a very consistent check-in process.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you are starting out, I think there's an element of you got to bide your time. Like there's so many young coaches now who they do their PT certification, and then all of a sudden, I want to be an online coach because I can work remotely anywhere in the world. I can make good money. You've got to pay your dues. And I think you need to have had experience yourself in the trenches, but also I think you need to have had experience with some good mentors, work with a coach. If someone says, "Oh, I want to do this," or if I want to be the best natural physique coach in the world, I want to be an IFBB, the best coach there is, I would go and find whoever I think is the best coach or is where I want to be. And then you need to go and learn from that person. And that is where you're going to get a lot more of your education. Just passing your basic certifications, whether you have a degree or you don't, that's just the base. Like then your education really starts, because you've got to learn how to implement that. You need life experience in terms of how to be able to relate to people. So I think there's definitely an element that you need to have worked with some people that are where you want to be, so that you can see what are the characteristics, the mannerisms, the way that they run their systems, and essentially upskill so that you're at a level that you may not be able to offer what they can, over a 6-12 month period, but you're going to go a long way to starting and doing your apprenticeship, so that over time you'll get better and better, like everyone does.
Yeah. And if there's anyone coming up, or anyone that wants to be a coach or is a coach and wants to improve, hit us up. I'm more than happy, and I'm sure you boys are more than happy to answer any questions, let them know how we run our business, how we do things. Like, if we're just going to make this industry better and create better coaches, I'm all for it. There's no scarcity of business and clientele here, so I'm more than happy to help anyone that wants to be a better coach, for sure. I know you boys would feel exactly the same.
Oh, for sure, man. Absolutely. I offered it to someone just this morning, man. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah. So hit us up, peeps, if you want any help. Okay, moving on to a comp prep question. Can we talk about quitting a comp halfway through? So I had to think about this question, actually, and I think there's got to be a bit of context in when we give some advice about what you would do and why you would quit. If it's like for an injury, if it's for life circumstances and situations change and it's going to disrupt your prep, by all means. If that means that you have to quit your comp, and that's all good, there's plenty of comps going around. And I've had this conversation with a couple of clients. Actually, I'll give 2 examples. One is I had a client that was in prep halfway through. They're going to laugh when they hear this. They lost their license, which meant that they would have to catch a bus, and they lived in a rural area, and the bus only came every X amount of hours, and they just couldn't get to the gym, and they were a single mum with 2 kids, and it was just too hard. And I was like, plenty of comps out there in the future. Let's just let this one ride out and go back into off season, manage it the best we possibly can to do what we can. And then when the timing's right and your foundation is stable and life is stable again, and you can 100% commit and tick the box and get everything done, we'll go back into comp prep. And that person now this year is going to compete. And they literally just mentioned me this morning. They said, this is the best. This is the best I feel about comp I've ever felt about this off season and how good I feel about going into the next comp prep. So that was one example. I had another example, which I spoke to this person recently, is their life has just been completely changed, family life and things like that. And I literally said to them, this is a big disruption. We need to worry about your mental health first above anything to do with comp prep. So they haven't started prep, but I said, we need to manage what you're going through at the moment and making sure that is stable before we even start a prep. So there's reasons why you may not prep, cut a prep halfway through, whatever that may be, that make total sense, right? That make total absolute sense. The other reasons why someone may quit their comp prep is because they feel they're not going to be ready, right? Which is, everyone feels that. I mean, like, we have people that look so ready and they're like, am I going to be ready? And I'm like, I'm going to be ready, don't worry. So if you're having those thoughts, let the coach answer that question, right? And reassure you whether you're going to be ready or not. Don't quit a comp prep because you think you're not ready, because you're always going to think that. Most people are always going to think they're not ready, okay? Because we all have doubts and we can't really visibly see sometimes and be the best accurate predictor of how we think we're going to go and whether we're ready or not. The next one is if you quit a prep because you can't handle it. Like and I'm saying if you're doing things in your prep that are above and beyond what you need to do, like we've had past clients that have gone through preps and like, how did you do that? Like, how did you do that much cardio? How did you eat that less food? Like, I don't know how you did that prep. So if you're in a prep like that and you can't handle it, I hear you. I hear you. But if you're in a prep that's been done right and you can't handle it, you can't do the cardio, you can't do the diet, you can't do the training, you can't do the posing, you can't do the sacrificing of social situations, things like that, that's you ending the prep because you can't buy in what's required to get the prep done, right? And I think that's going to go back to the reasons why you're competing, right? If you're competing because you're trying to get back at someone, or it's for revenge, or it's because it's the cool thing to do and you want to get some cool photos, or do it what everyone else is doing, or my best friend's competing, so I want to compete with them. Those reasons might get you through a prep, but more likely won't be strong enough reasons to get you through what's required to prep, because prep is not easy. It's a lot of sacrifice involved, right? So if you're doing prep for the wrong reasons, you will probably pull out. Some people don't. Some people are doing prep for those reasons and get through it and do amazing, but it's not the majority, right? So prepping for the right reasons and wanting to do this for the right reasons is going to make the biggest difference if you're going to see this thing out to the end, right? And I think also, is the prep lifestyle congruent with your traditional lifestyle, right? So, for instance, those people that maybe are doing prep because they want to fix their unhealthy lifestyle, they're probably not going to last a prep. If they're doing prep because they think it's going to improve their mental health, or that it's going to improve something that's broken or something that needs fixing, they're probably not going to last a prep. You need to prep when you have everything, your foundation is solid, right? Super solid. Because there's so much sacrifices involved and so many things you need to commit to and need to do on a daily basis to get through the process. So if you want to quit, it's fine. Like, no problem. No one's forcing you to do this. No one's forcing you to do this at all. But if you're quitting for any of those reasons that I spoke about, that should all be a massive conversation with your coach and with people that are around you that support you, because they know you best. What do you think? Let's start with you, MG, about quitting a prep halfway through.
I would say this. I would say the position I like to be in when somebody starts prep is that the amount of changes you have to make to turn it into prep is minimal.
Mm-hmm.
In essence, really, in a lot of cases, all you're changing is your food and the way that you move. But you should already be living and breathing the lifestyle, whether you've been just growing or whether you've been maintaining or going through a metabolism phase. If you're someone who has to change everything about your lifestyle to start that prep, it's probably not a prep I want to start as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's too many things to chop and change. You should already be living and breathing a big part of it. And that's what I see is the biggest thing for people who end up not wanting to continue with a prep, is that the start of their prep, they weren't set up well and they had to change far too many things and it just became too overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have already practiced sacrificing social situations. The reason why I like spending time in off-season with people is not for the obvious reasons as well, which is build your metabolism up, try and grow as much muscle tissue, get an idea of where the person's, maintenance calories are and how they respond to certain things that we do as coaches, is I like to see that someone knows how to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in off-season, even though you might be eating, as a female, 350 grams of carb, you can't go to restaurants every 3 days. You still need to make sacrifices and prep food, and prepping food's a big one, and be able to say no to social situations. And you still need to be able to get into a gym 5 days a week. It's like people who I've been training 2 to 3 days a week with mates. I haven't tracked or measured anything. I've never tracked or measured food. I like to go out every single weekend, and it's like I'm going to jump straight into prep. It's like that's just too big of a switch in one big hit. So for me, that's the thing I see that the people that do pull out for the reasons you mentioned earlier, it's typically because they've had to change too many circumstances.
Yeah.
And have I had people who have pulled out? I've had people who've pulled out for reasons that are outside of your control. Emily's gotten pregnant twice during prep. That's one example. What are you going to do, right? So, but we're getting there. We're so close. We're finally competing this season. And then I've had just last season, a really great young athlete whose partner had a really terrible accident on a work site.
Yeah.
And he was her training partner. They're obviously lovers, best friends, and just going to the gym without him to find the motivation just became too much and too sad. Mm-hmm. So the emotional decision to protect her well-being was, we'll do a show in years, like just take a break and help him get better. So pulling out of prep are okay. I just think if you want to set yourself up for success, have all the right pieces to the puzzle before you start the prep.
Do it for the right reasons and have the lifestyle that's congruent.
Have the lifestyle that is already there. Like, you're just changing such small details.
Yeah. What do you think, Scotty?
I think you guys have nailed it. You've got it. The main takeaway there is, like we said, you've got to have a why. You've got to be willing to sacrifice, but also you need to be able to create an environment that's conducive with the contest prep lifestyle, because it's not easy. If it was, everyone would do it. Everyone loves the end destination, all the praise and the compliments and people can be very attracted to the likes that you get on Instagram. But the process, when it's the middle of winter and you've got to get up at 6 a.m. and go and do some steps because you're going to be sat in your desk chair at the office all day if that's what you do for work, and then you've got to come home and prep your food and do all those things, there's an element of sacrifice and there's an element of responsibility to the prep, because you're investing time, money. And if you're not willing to make that sacrifice, then you just shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's why you've got to be in the right place within your life. And the best thing about this sport is the stage will always be there. There's so many shows all year round now. Yeah. There's so much opportunity. Mm-hmm. But that's why I think having a bit of foresight around when you are going to compete, knowing when it is, because if I use myself as an example, my prep's going to start in about 8 weeks or something, but everything that I'm doing now is as though I'm in contest prep. Yeah, I might go out for, a soup on a Friday. That's the one thing. It's still tracked, but otherwise, even things like making sure your steps are tracked, putting in place the systems around, the family so that I know that what my schedule is going to be. So when it comes time to press play, it's a real seamless transition because you've prepared everything in advance, you know what's expected of you, and you know what's required. So if all of those bits and pieces are set up so that you can thrive rather than always having to troubleshoot, if you're having to troubleshoot all the time, then perhaps it's just not the right time for you to compete.
Yeah, I think one of a factor that you can see that someone's doing this for the wrong reason or their life is not congruent to prep is if they're constantly complaining and negative about the whole process. 100% there's going to be complaining and there's going to be negative to do with with the prep for sure. But if it outweighs any of the positives and you think to yourself, why are you doing this? Like, why are you doing something that is just bringing negativity and you're just complaining about it constantly? So that's normally a key indicator that you're doing this all for the wrong reasons or your life's not congruent to it for sure. Or you're just not, and maybe in the future it will be, right? But just right now, it's not time, right? So that's what we said, like stage is always going to be there. And you don't need to do a show right now. Maybe it's not right for you right now, which is perfectly fine. And maybe it'll never be right for you, but maybe it's just now that it's not working for you. Doesn't mean it can't never be done, for sure.
Yeah.
We got a question about what do you think about taking over a client or someone changing coaches, halfway through their prep? That they say it about 9 to 10 weeks out. What would you think about taking someone on that's kind of halfway through or that 9 to 10 week out mark? Would you recommend that person change coaches? And would you as a coach take someone on?
I literally had that happen to me 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and that with someone last season as well who
Me?
No, Scotty as well.
Scotty,
I think who I think you suggested just finish the prep and then take over post that point as well. Yeah, anyway,
tell us about it, Scotty.
What's that? Sorry, my volume's gone all weird. Hold on, go again. Sorry, volume went all weird.
Why did you take that person on recently that was halfway through their prep?
Well, firstly, he reached out to me, and again, like I was saying, he said that he had spoken to a few people who I coach and work with, and at first, whenever that first happens, I always start saying thanks for reaching out, blah blah blah. Firstly, I can't guarantee, I can't say yes, I can, because obviously I've got no idea where you're at. So before we can do that, there's some basic things that I need on your end. So send me through some check-in pics that you have. Did it straight away. So things that I'm looking for, if he's like, yeah, I'll send them through, but send them through straight away. Within 3 or 4 minutes of me asking what I needed, they were in my inbox in an email. So I was like, all right, he's pretty enthusiastic. Had he not really mucked around, then I'm like, I've got a busy day. Do I really want to invest time out of my day with someone who may be half in, half out? So it was super enthusiastic. And then I was like, all right, well, given where he's at, and unfortunately he didn't start prep, he was running a shorter contest prep than what he should have, given where he was at. But I was like, okay, this is potentially achievable. But before we can do that, I need to know, I don't know anything about this person. So we need to schedule a consult and then explaining this is what we'll cover. And from my end, I'm gauging what is he like as a person, what is his ability like to be able to push and dig, because in an ideal world, we would have started prep at 28 weeks out, not at 11 weeks out. And again, willing to do whatever it takes, yada, yada, yada. And so based on information and that consult, I got all the info that I needed. I was able to identify, roughly I reckon we do, but I couldn't just say then and there, this is what we're going to do. I said, you need to give me at least 24 hours so I can actually run some numbers, work out where we need to be, and then I guess map out how we're going to go about the amount we need to lose, the time frames, and essentially periodize it all so that I can have it in front of me, and then I can actually deliver it to you so that you'll actually understand and that we have that transparency between us. And then that was what we did. There was an element that I was very transparent. The first 4 to 6 weeks are going to be super aggressive because we've got X amount we need to lose, and this is the time frame we have. And again, we also need to allow for a slowed rate of loss towards the end. Otherwise, we're just going to lose lean tissue. And the crappy thing is this guy had tried to work so hard over a 2.5, 3 year off-season period, but the coach just hadn't invested in that and also didn't give him the tools to succeed, thinking that you could just get lean in 14 weeks from where he was starting from. Fortunate enough, we've been able to pull off some real extreme amounts of composition in such a short time, and he's definitely he'll be ready when it comes for show one. And the other crazy thing, this guy has potential. You know, I'm not naming who this person is, but I think he does listen to the podcast, so he'll probably know. But he has potential to contend in the next 12 months for a pro card. So it's like it sucks that his coach hadn't done him the service to be able to give him everything he needed and set up the right protocols and the planning in place for him to thrive. Didn't set him up for success from the start. But again, before we commenced that relationship from working together, I was very transparent in that you need to make sure that you've ceased your existing, because I'm not going to have you still working with someone else and then working with me. So once that is 100% concluded and that's done, and he said that he had terminated it. It was fine. He wanted to get cracking straight away. So again, I matched that enthusiasm and I had everything over to him within like 12 hours of our last consult, because I knew that time is of the essence. And again, he's super enthusiastic. And one of my philosophies with coaching is if someone's enthusiastic, I'll match that enthusiasm 100%. So had it over to him, and it's been really, really smooth sailing, ever since. In an ideal world, it would have been better if we had more time. But on the other side of the coin, I've had people that have said they're in prep, and I've had to have that hard conversation. You just don't have enough time. So if you want to cease your prep and the relationship with your coach, that's fine. In terms of what I would recommend, and again, map it out for them, this is how I would treat the next 6 to 12 weeks. Let's recover out of this little phase that you've been in. You need to give me 12 months to be able to make the adjustments that we need. And then let's look at this show here. So if you want to work with me, that is how I'm going to go about coaching you. But I've also had people say, no, I'm going to do this season. Like, do you want to prep me or not? And I have to say, you're better off just finding someone else. But again, anyone that takes you on doesn't have your best interest at heart and is just thinking of their wallet.
Yeah. Man, literally everything you've said is exactly how I've done it, and exactly what I'd be telling them too.
Mm-hmm.
Is getting as much information as possible off them, analyzing that data, seeing whether it's achievable, setting an expectation. If you don't think that it's achievable and they want to continue on, good luck with someone else. Someone else will definitely take your money for you, off you. And yeah, I've started people 9 weeks out, 10 weeks out, 1 week out, 2 weeks out. It really just depends, right? But one thing I always make sure is I always, and this is from a social media aspect, if I'm going to post that person and say, hey, look at this person achieved on stage, they won, they whatever, I'll always make sure I spell out, I took this person on X weeks out, right? And they were with someone else. And it's almost like I'm not trying to take the credit for everything. It's like, all I did was just showed you what I did from this amount of time I've been with them. Because as we know, and we've seen this, is some coaches will take the credit for maybe some other coaches' work. So I always try to make sure that that we do that, and we have that level of respect for everyone else in the industry. I know you boys did the same thing. But,
Yeah, you've handled yourself very well many occasions like that, man. I've seen it for a few times, and you've always been very respectful and very, very transparent in what you're putting out.
Yeah. You got to make sure. Like, why would I take it from anyone else? And if you got a good result from when you started with them to when they jumped on stage, and even if it's 9-10 weeks, but you can show that result, that's just proving your work, right? So
for sure,
just be transparent in everything that you do. But have you been in those situations too, MG?
Yeah, I've taken someone this season where they wanted to do the first show, and I said, we're not going to have enough time. So I said, I definitely think we can get ready, but it's going to be for the second show, which is obviously 6 weeks later. And same as Scotty, everything happened super fast. All the data that I needed was there. And then actually, we've been together for just over a month now, and I'm actually changed my mind, and we are going to do the first show because the results have been so good in such a short amount of time. So I said initially no. We'll do the second one because I didn't want to put them on stage not looking prepped, but things have gone so well that I'm actually reinstating that first show now. So
yeah, awesome.
So things do change.
That's awesome. Next question we got was, where is it? I think it was a cool one actually. Um, Pumping up on show day. Um, when do you pump up? And not how do you pump up, but when do you know when to pump up on show day? Do you want to take that one, Scotty?
Yeah, sure. So, firstly, from however many hours out from when you're going to be on stage, typically your coach will have given you like a show day plan, I would presume, and you'd have the meals that you're going to consume and the timing of those meals. And so typically what I do, I'll normally have a note that will request when they need to pump up after which meals, and then sending photos, because a big part of our job is managing the look from as soon as they wake up. Doesn't matter what you did the day before or the day before that. It matters what you have in front of you. And again, it's a moving target, being able to hold a look, or if you're regressing, you need to top it back up again. You just need to constantly be on your toes. So typically, if you're pushing in carbohydrate with a meal, there will normally be a pump up that will follow, so that you can just help partition that carbohydrate, get it to where you want it to go. But if we're talking about like they're calling out the numbers, we're heading to the wooden floors, let's go guys, then I think at around about half an hour out from when your first division is when you should be starting to commence that pump up. The pump up should never be rushed. You should be able to just take your time, compose yourself, be methodical in the way that you move through it. You don't start going crazy, pumping out curls. Your work, I'd like to be very cyclical. So for example, we'll say, okay, we're going to start here. We're going to go this, and this in this order. But I want you to run through 5 rounds, take a breather, have a little bit of water, and then I'll come and have a look at you. And so they'll go through that process. Yep, sweet. Okay, now I want you to focus a little bit more on this. And so it's just, again, you're constantly just fine tuning and auto regulating in real time. But essentially about half an hour out, once you've had your pre-workout or you've pushed in your citrulline, you want to start to think about pumping up within about 10 minutes of that, just so that you can push it into circulation. But otherwise, essentially after each meal that you're putting in carbohydrate, that's when you would pump up.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's one thing probably that most people don't do that we see backstage is they don't pump up after meals, which is we know is pretty important to shovel that carbohydrate in a little bit. Can you pump up too much?
Yeah, for sure. If you're pumping up for an hour, and this is where you need to, and your coach needs to be really on the money with how far out are you? Are you running behind? Because if you keep pumping up, and there's an hour that goes by and you're still pumping up, you're just burning through some of that carbohydrate, that muscle glycogen stores that you've tried to top up. That's essentially, if you're not eating, that's what you're using. And as an example, I remember my very first pro show, started pumping up, and they just kept giving us bad information. And from when I started to when I stepped on, it was almost 2 hours.
Wow.
And so it was lucky where we had gauge, because some of the lineups, they were up there for 35, 40 minutes. It was just ridiculous because they were huge lineups. So I was literally just feeding every sort of 15 minutes, taking on about 20 grams of carbohydrate, just glucose, so that it was readily being absorbed, topping up. Because if you don't, then the look's going to fade.
Yeah.
And also, if it's been however many hours since your last meal, you also get tired as well.
Yeah.
And you've pushed in normally an acute dose of sodium. And if you're still pumping up and you're not also onboarding fluid with that, then essentially the physique, as you're trying to get warmer, you're slowly dehydrating more and more and more. And then if you get out on stage and you've spilled and you haven't made that, adjustment of water that you need to take on as well. So again, it's always a moving target. So you just have to be across the time barriers. So always be checking in. What division are they at? All the staff at all the feds are pretty good with that. Like, how far out are we?
Yep.
Don't just go by what's on the running sheet.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's really important to stay in contact with the marshals at the back.
Yep.
To know how far out they are, when they're coming up, what division they're at, so you know roughly how much time you got left to stage. And yeah, I think you made a really good point about not getting puffed out, because we've seen people that will be pumping up right before stage, they walk out and they're huffing and puffing and they can't control their core because they're just they've pumped up too much or too hard. Yeah, for sure. So, Scotty, how do you hold a pump? Because we've seen a lot of people that can't hold a pump. And I know there's a lot of things to do with hydration, electrolytes, carbohydrates, things like that. But do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So if you can't hold a pump or get a pump, then you're flat.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
So as in when you're flat, you just haven't topped up muscle glycogen stores, and potentially you don't have enough sodium in circulation. Again, maybe you can speak about your first show last year, MG, because you sort of you experienced that in real time.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
MT. Sorry, I said MG.
Yeah.
I
It's
knew
been 5 hours since I've been.
I knew what he meant because I remember backstage at my show, I was pumping up and you're like, man, you look fine. And I kept walking around and you're like, can you just fucking sit down for fucking 2 minutes? You remember? I was fine. I don't know.
Yeah. No, with me, yeah. Like,
yeah, MT, sorry.
I for my first show, yeah, I couldn't get a pump. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel that tightness you feel. Like if you're doing bicep curls, right, for your pump up, as an example, and you can't feel the bicep getting tight, like the skin getting tight and it filling out, or even when you're doing, for guys, when they're doing, push-ups for chest and things like that, and you can't feel it getting tight and filling out, or you can't feel a contraction, even when you're flexing a bicep or flexing your chest, and you just can't feel that like peak contraction, then you know that you can't get a pump. And that's what I had in my first show, compared to the ICN show, the second show, where I was vascular, everything was full. I could get a pump. I could feel it. I could feel a burn. I could feel it filling out. I could feel the skin tight against the muscle. That was the biggest difference for sure.
And it wasn't just carbohydrate that was the problem. Like with you, it was like, I even remember right before you going out, we were speaking and I was like, bro, you need to push in some sodium, like quick, and you were popping them on. But again, it was just a little bit too late. But it's about having that balance right. And that's why I always talk about, in order to get your peak right, you've got to track your electrolyte levels, and you should know how much carbohydrate that you need to be able to push in. But typically, if it's a flat look, it's normally as a result of carbohydrate, fluid, and sodium.
Yeah. How about you, MG? Anything to add on that?
No, I reckon yours is a really, really good example. And remember, we had one of my mates come down who's actually prepping just because he wanted to watch that whole filling out process. But that's another thing that comes back to what we were talking about earlier about like some of the expectations from like what you should have from your coach is like, a pretty detailed plan on what's going to happen that day with approximations, right? Because as Scotty said, he thought he would be on 2 hours earlier, and these things happen, right? Stage times get delayed, but you should have a pretty good idea as to roughly when you're consuming each of your meals, roughly when you are pumping up, and how long you're going to be pumping up for. I know, like Scott, on your plans, I know your shadow plans, you write in the morning, 5-minute pump up, send some photos. Next meal, 2 hours later, 5-minute pump up, send some photos. Like, it doesn't have to be anything too crazy because you're not trying to obviously burn through all the glycogen that you just put in your body, but you should have a fairly good plan as to what you're doing that morning. And if you're just winging it and, not sending any pictures to your coach as to what you're looking like or assessing as you go, then that's probably a bit of an issue as well.
Yeah. And the other thing with those pump ups, let's say that with that 5-minute pump up, you should be able to get a pump straight away because you've done nothing. You've topped up muscle glycogen stores. And if you can't, again, that's a really, really good metric to be able to gauge, okay, can't get a pump. We're flat here. We need to push in a bit more fluid, some sodium, and I'm going to push in a big carbohydrate meal. And then let's see how you go with your next meal and your next pump up. Now we got a response. Okay, we're cool. And again, sometimes you can do all the right things in the lead up to that, but for whatever reason, some people just burn through it overnight, and that does tend to happen.
Yep, awesome.
Yeah, I think an important component too is also during your pump up rounds or once you've pumped up, whatever it may be, is go through your posing too.
Yes,
because that can definitely help facilitate some sharpness to your physique.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
because we see all the time is if someone's on round after round, like division, come off, get an they improve sometimes because they've just kept posing and posing. And even while we see them up there being compared, because they've been posing for so long, they just get sharper and sharper and sharper. So practicing posing during pump up or, before you jump on stage is important too.
Definitely.
And when you're not pumping up, you should be just like MG was a perfect example. I literally would have he was just so itching to get out there and he was pacing. Yeah. I was like, bro, just chill out, sit down.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely got to calm your nerves a bit too.
Yeah,
Sure.
it wasn't even nerves, man. I was literally just like,
He was just itching.
I was
Yeah.
amped, man. I was like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
let's go down and do it now. Like,
Yeah.
and also, yeah, it's really hard for me just in normal life to sit still. Like
Yeah.
even on this potty, right? I'm fidgeting like it's.
Oh
I,
no.
al- I always struggle sitting still. It's just me 24/7. But but it is important, right? Because all that pacing up and down, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm starting to flatten out again. Well, fucking sit down, you idiot.
All right, boys. Man, this makes me excited for the first show. It's in like 2.5 weeks. The rookies ICN. I know MG and myself will be there. Scotty, you'll be enjoying a little trip.
You
But
just
Yeah, but
you,
you guys have got to send me some photos though, because I'm spewing. Even with my check-ins this morning, some of my guys that are they're 8 weeks out talking about our trial peak weeks that we're going to be employing at 4 weeks out. In my head, I'm like 4 weeks out. It's exciting.
yeah,
This is when you love what you do. It's just like
yeah,
it's nice because after season B, everyone's a bit burnt out and you're just
yeah,
hanging for a break. And now I'm itching to get back there. I'm actually spewing that I'm. At first, I was like, nah, it'll be good because I get a bit more of a break. But now I'm itching to get back. It's going to be
yeah.
good.
I'm itching, man. And then like after that show, I think every weekend there's something. There's either a show or there's a workshop or there's
Oh, and
something.
the next weekend is double posing workshop for A and B. We've got guys and
Yeah,
girls on 2 separate days, and then it's non-stop from there onwards.
yeah. I can't wait. It's going to go fast.
Yeah.
And it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be good.
All right, fellas. Good chatting to you. And we'll definitely be catching up very, very soon.
Well, Friday night
Sounds
soon.
good. Have a good
All
day,
right.
boys.
See you, boys.